you're unlikely to hear me say that Nintendo Switch is a good console. But first, coffee. Woo. Today's coffee beans are from Papua New Guinea, I think. Actually had a bit of this the other day, but I can't remember how it tastes, so I'll be looking forward to giving you my opinion on this later. So this is a video I've been thinking about making for about 2 years, maybe 3 years, maybe 4 years. I've been thinking about making this video for a number of years, but I've never really had the courage to go ahead and make it. But I want to point out that on this channel, it's very important to me that I don't make statements like Nintendo Switch is a really good console, or Nintendo Switch is a really bad console, or that you need to buy something, or that you should do this, or you should do that. And what it really comes down to is that I can't say that a console is good or bad because of the backlash. A lot of people, oh, where's the spoon? It's not that I'm afraid of the backlash, it's just that from reading comments and having this channel gradually become more and more internationally viewed over the past few years, I noticed that the more that you use any absolute language, like good or bad, the more that you realize that for every time that you've thought that a PlayStation Vita was good, or that a PlayStation Vita was the most terrible console on earth, there's going to be someone who says, no, I don't think that it's a terrible console on earth, or I think PlayStation Vita is amazing. And so I gradually came to a point where I ended up using the words good and bad less and less, and because it was a little bit too bothersome to say, in my opinion, before every time I spoke, I just decided to describe things for the way they were, as opposed to whether I thought they were good or bad, which is an opinion which also changes over time. But first, let's grind. And it massively, massively formed the way that I work with this channel. Because this channel does have reviews of games, of products. I also talk about new products that come out, and I'm also very aware that anything that I say, or anything that anyone on the internet says about a product, like Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, or any other game that ends up getting a lot of bad press and ends up potentially not being continued, who knows, maybe just because of the bad press. We'll never really know if that was the exact reason. But it's hard to ignore that the net result of what we say about products being good or bad could massively affect whether the product survives or does not survive. And so, in general, what I did with anything like a tablet review, or a games console review, or like an arcade stick review, or I said arcade stick when I picked up the Switch, I generally avoid the word good and bad. And actually, if you've ever heard me say the words good or bad, it's most likely just a slip up, an accident, because I'm trying not to say it. I can't guarantee that I won't say it, but I'm just trying not to. And so instead of good and bad, I'll use words like, this console is ideal if you're the type of person who is always mobile. But compared to the components that are inside it, you could actually get a more powerful machine for less money, stuff like that. And that's the sort of information that I believe is a little bit more useful than telling people that something is good. Because what if someone goes out and buys it and finds that it's not good for them? You will have been the reason why they wanted something that actually they didn't like. But if you give people just purely, I don't know if the word is qualitative, information about the product, then really they can't say you were wrong, because if you only give people factual information and your opinion, then they're more likely to be able to, I think, form a better opinion as to whether this is the right product for them. Because no matter how much I like a product, it's very difficult for me to come up with every possible situation that any person might be in, and when they buy the console and it doesn't work out for them because actually they've got 4 kids and actually there's no way to share their accounts, and they realize this is a terrible console as a result. Obviously Switch managed to avoid that one by having multiple accounts on the same console, but stuff like that could happen, and I can't really be prepared for every single situation, even if I really try. And it's not just product reviews, it's also about playing games, being good at games, being bad at games, being good at drawing or being bad at drawing, are words that I just cannot bring myself to use anymore, because it doesn't really mean anything to me. It's really difficult for me when I massively respect someone's art who I believe is good. You know, in my opinion, it's good art. And then they say, oh, that was really bad. I really sucked today. That was terrible. And I'm like, you're telling me that that's bad, that makes me feel like what I do is just the worst. To describe our work as good or bad, or other people's, art as good or bad, can actually make people feel pretty awful inside as a result, when really you're just trying to say that I know that I have more potential. I could have drawn this picture very, very differently, and you want people to know that. But when you tell people that was bad, a lot of people who feel that they're not as good as you as an artist just walk away from the experience feeling like, well, I've got no hope. If they feel like that's bad, then I've got no hope. Alright, that's done. I'm going to turn the camera down now. And the water's done too, which is good. So this discussion about the words good and bad actually lead very nicely into a more important discussion, a wider discussion about my use of language in general. I mean, I could actually make entirely massive, huge, full videos about the fact that I try not to use swear words in my videos, and that's actually not because I just don't like swearing, but it's actually because of the way I feel about swear words and the way that I don't feel they really convey all the information that I'm trying to send along, transmit, because I often think that when someone really is just swearing a lot, they're just looking for words to accentuate what they're really trying to say. Things like really, or very, or amazingly. Those are words that have, well anyway, there's a very massive, large discussion about it. But for now that we're talking about the words good and bad, when we say that our work is good or bad, and let's say that we think that our work is bad, we often follow it up with a sentence like, I need to practice. So let's say that I'm bad at Street Fighter, which maybe I am. Maybe I genuinely, factually am bad at Street Fighter. But let's say I followed it up with a sentence like, I really need to practice. The only thing that I find that's difficult about this sentence is that if I use need to practice, I'm actually less likely to actually go and practice after that. And I found that the reason is that whenever I separate myself from my will, so whenever I don't realize that it's something that I want to do, when I feel like it's something that has to be done, it is factually, if it is not done, then there will be some repercussions of some sort. Then I find that I'm less likely to actually go and do those things. So especially if I use the word should. And it gets much more complicated if you say that someone else should do something. But if you say, I really should do my homework, then it's very easy to just sit on the couch and not do one's homework. And if you say, I really need to study, otherwise I'm going to fail this exam, well, that may be true, but it doesn't say anything about whether you're actually going to study and actually pass the exam. But if you say, I really want to pass this exam, so you put a bit more of your actual personal will into the discussion, then I feel like, well, at least personally, I'm more likely to actually go and do it, because now I know that it's something that I want to do. And I realize that this is massively just a part of my personality. A lot of people are very proficient at doing things that they know need to be done, should be done, or have to be done. But personally, I find that a lot of the time, I won't do things unless I feel like it's something that I want to do. Alright, Papua New Guinea. I do not remember how you taste, but we're about to find out. Oh, I made way too much. Who knows? Hopefully it's not going to be too thin as a result. Thin? Weak, I guess. Way too hot. Alright, so here's the first issue, is that I've clearly added more water than I would like to have done. I feel like it's much weaker as a result, and I'm less able to figure out what the actual coffee tastes like as a result. The discussion about whether one needs to practice, so like maybe you want to get good at Street Fighter, or get good at Tekken, and you go, I really need to practice. I really should have done this. I should have done that. I really want to practice. And I often find that it's not really a problem if people say that they need to do something or should do something, but knowing my personality, and if you know your personality, you may find that it helps to avoid words like need and should, because it extracts yourself from whether you want to do it and are going to do it. If you just think it's something that must be done, it goes with all the other things in the world that must be done. We must sort out global warming, really need to recycle. It's just things that really need to be done in the world, because we know that if they're not done, there will be massive repercussions. Although I realize there are people who believe that there won't be repercussions, but personally I believe there will be repercussions. But the situation actually gets even more complicated when you use the word need or should for someone else's behavior. And for example, I was talking with friends recently about movies and the fact that if people say certain things about a movie in a bad way, and I'm not going to say which movie it was, then it's very possible that movies like that will not get greenlit in the future. And whether you think that's a bad thing or a good thing, maybe a lot of people will be like, that's a good thing, we don't want movies like this anymore. That could massively change a person's career. We could end up without a product which could have been something we loved dearly, but because people were afraid to take risks, because people bashed at certain games and certain movies too hard, it means we may never get more stuff like that. And who knows, it might have been a gem, it might have been something that we came to love dearly, but because we bash things so hard on the internet, and I'm sure that I'm guilty of doing the exact same thing sometimes, it's hard to ignore that the net result is that some games may just never come back, and it could well be our fault. But here's where it gets difficult. When we say, people really need to stop bashing stuff on the internet, well, people really shouldn't say such things on the internet. And I've heard this recently. I'm not saying that everyone says this. It's just a discussion that I was having with friends recently. We run into a situation where our language actually causes the opponent, if we call them that, to become defensive, even if they're not actually really feeling that passionate about it. But when you say, you should stop saying stuff like that, the truth is, personally, if I heard that, I'd be like, well, I really don't have to stop saying anything. I have my freedom of speech, I'm allowed to say my opinion. Why shouldn't I feel entitled to give my opinion? And I think if we're more careful with our language, then we're less likely to offend people who we actually don't mean to offend. I think we may actually want to say, look, if you didn't say those things, those harmful things about Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, for example, then maybe certain companies would have put more effort into games to fixing them and make them better. But because we were so angry about the way that things had been handled, it means that companies just gave up on certain franchises and will never get them again. So people really should stop saying that. People have to stop talking negatively. But it makes us feel defensive and we'll really want to defend and say, no, I don't have to not say anything. I shouldn't, there's nothing that I need to do differently because I have my freedom and it's within my right. I'm entitled to my opinion. I'm entitled to saying what I think freely on the internet, with the only censor really being whether YouTube says, oh, actually, we don't like what you're saying, so it's down to the platform owner. But I think in most cases, that's actually not our intention. We don't actually want to make you feel like you have to do something. I think what we just want to bring to attention is that if we're more careful with our words, then we could still give our opinions, share our feelings, and let companies know how we feel about games not being the way that we want them to be, but in a way that allows them to rebound from it and actually put some work into the game and actually fix it. Because sometimes when we talk about things so negatively, it actually puts companies in a difficult position where they can't actually go and fix it anymore. It's just too late. It's just such bad press for a certain franchise that, let's say it was Marvel vs. Capcom and the Marvel movies are coming out, and they just do not want to be associated with this game which is getting bad press. It can actually be a result of the way that we reacted on the internet that they decide to not develop the game further, because the bad press is becoming associated with a movie which actually has very little to do with the game, apart from having some of the heroes and the characters and the functions. Oops. Alright, I'm gonna try this coffee again and see whether it tastes different. I really don't know how to describe it. It's not particularly earthy. It does taste like coffee, but I really added way too much water, and so on this occasion I think it's going to be very difficult for me to pass judgment on this coffee, because I have had it before and I remember it tasted different. So I think I'm just going to have to wait till I make this coffee in a separate video another time to give you a proper opinion, but right now it just tastes like It's a little bit of a watery coffee, and that makes it so difficult to judge whether I like it or not and what actual flavors were in it. And plus, I have terribly weak taste buds, so who knows? Maybe everything I say about these coffees is total nonsense anyway, who knows? And really that's the point of this whole discussion. Whether it's the words good or bad, should, need, or have to, it's the fact that these words are very absolute. We're saying that the product is good or product is bad, or that you must do something or you have to do something when it really feels like we don't have to do those things at all. I'm entitled to do whatever I feel like. And if we think less about our opinions, especially on the internet, as things that we have to say or are entitled to say, or we have the freedom to say and so we're going to say them anyway just because we can, and more about the net results of our actions, then I think we are more likely to get the results that we actually want. If we use Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite as an example, because it was often talked about very negatively and people felt very passionately angry about this product, and we had actually given a little more thought to what is actually going to happen as a result of what I say about this game, then we may have had a little more control over whether the game actually got more support and actually got the bug fixes and improvements and enhancements that we had been hoping for. And also, if we're just thinking about what we want to see on the internet, like, I want to see fewer people getting angry about, okay, I'm just gonna say it, The Last Jedi. Let's say that I want people to be less angry about The Last Jedi. I have an option. I could go onto the comments section and I could say, stop being so cruel about The Last Jedi. You're actually killing it and making it worse by saying such horrible things about the movie. You're actually killing creativity and making it harder for people to take chances on new ideas. Personally, I actually didn't like the movie very much, but I'm not going to go out and tell anyone that the movie was bad. It's often just because it doesn't get me closer to what I actually want, which is to tell people why I didn't like something. If I go ahead and just say, it's a bad movie and they did lots of things incorrectly, then first of all, it's going to cause the other person to become defensive. They may want to defend the product that they're not even feeling that particularly positive about. But you place an absolute on the movie, which is going to cause you to clash in a way that actually isn't really what your conversation was about. You say it's bad, they think it's good, now you're clashing. But if you say, I don't think the movie worked in this way, then they could actually conversely say, well, I think exactly what you think didn't work was what made the movie interesting. And who knows, we may look at this movie 4 years down the line, and we may be very grateful that they took a lot of chances, because then the movie didn't get stuck in a rut and doing the same old stuff over and over and over again. We may end up with movies that we could not have had if we had just gone down the path that we all expected it to. Again, I'm not going to say whether it's good or whether it's bad. Genuinely just trying to think about what is the net result. For me, the goal is to have interesting discussions and not to decide whether a movie was good or whether a movie was bad. And let's face it, to say whether a movie is good or bad is to be dealing in absolutes. And only a Sith deals in absolutes. It's an incredibly wide open topic, and I'm sure that a lot of people will have very widely varying opinions on Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, on things like The Last Jedi. Honestly, one of the success stories for me this year was when people spoke out about BlazBlue on the DLC, and as a result, they just changed it in a way that made us happier. And because I think, and although the game hasn't come out yet, because I think the fans are happier now, I think sales are probably going to rise up as a result. That's a story where I think it's going to work out profitably for the company. With Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, we complained so much because we actually feel passionate about the game. We want things to change, but because of how passionate we were and how vocal we were, in the end they reached a point where they had to just cut it off because the publicity was out of control and it was going to affect the movie, which in a way is kind of unfair because the people who worked on the movie probably very, very unrelated to the people who were working on the games. So I totally see where they're coming from. Personally, I actually really enjoy the game. I don't play it that often, but I played it again finally after getting out of hospital. I played Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite the other day, and I played Black Panther, and I was like, I love this character. This is so much fun to play. Anyway, I'm very keen to know what you think in the comments. This is a video that I've wanted to make for 3 or 4 years, and even though I've made it today, I still feel like it's not the video that I could have created. I feel like I had a lot more opinions that I didn't manage to get into this session. Plenty of ideas that I would like to have shared that I just didn't come across, maybe because I was drinking the coffee a little too quickly and I was getting a little buzzed. I still feel like this video is not as complete as it could have been, but I'm glad that I finally made it, because language is intensely important to me, and articulating precisely what it is I want to say in a way that doesn't offend people and doesn't put people in a defensive position is one of the areas that I massively take pride in this channel, and I will hopefully continue to do so in the future. So how about you? Do you use good, bad, should to, have to, need to in your daily speech? Or are you interested in maybe spending about a week just trying out avoiding those words and using other words that kind of describe how you feel about things, as opposed to making decisions and statements and judgments about whether you think something is positive, negative, good, or bad? I'm incredibly interested to hear what you have to say, because this is a topic that I hold incredibly close to my heart and is one of the main driving reasons why I continue to make this channel. Because for every time I see a channel that says like, hey, this guitar is a great guitar, but then also goes onto a guitar which is about 10 times cheaper and I've actually played and hated the feel of, and also said, this is a really great guitar, it's been kind of difficult to continue watching channels like that, because then the word starts to lose its meaning. And that is a massive whole other topic. If that's a video that you want to see, then do let me know in the comments. It's called, or rather I call it, the commoditization of language. But essentially that is it for now. Don't forget to comment, subscribe, share links and all that good stuff. Subscribing massively, massively helps the channel. Liking the video massively helps it in the algorithms so that more and more people can hear this message. This is another one of the main reasons why I do YouTube, is to talk about things that I feel passionately about, that I would like to spread. And I'll see you in the next NihongoGamer video. I added way too much water.